The looming possibility of a TikTok ban in the US has been causing chaos online. But the problem is actually a lot deeper than just the loss of a random social media app. It's easy to brush off the TikTok ban since, to many, it's just seen as a goofy app for annoying youth. But it's actually part of a long history of using popular media, and our access to it, as a means of control. Looking at the ban within the larger context of history can provide us with a better framework with which to engage with it, and possibly even some hope for the future. There have been many video sharing platforms online over the years. Even before YouTube began in 2005, there were sites like You the Man Now Dog where people could share clips and creations with the world. But with its rise over the last few years, TikTok seems to have captured a very special place within the social media ecosystem. It began as lip-syncing app Musical.ly, but has evolved into a behemoth of social media that contains video of essentially every type one could imagine. While it has continued to be home for dancing videos and hilarious moments, it has also become a place where people can have genuine deep discussions on a large scale. To write off the app, used by over 150 million people in the US alone, as just a showcase for self-centered kids, ignores so much of what the app really contains. People are able to share their own work and their favorite works of others out to audiences who likely never would have found it otherwise. And this is one thing users love so much about TikTok. In a world where we feel like we're constantly having to dig through slop forever just in the hopes of finding something we might like, and then having to worry that if we finally do, it'll be destroyed in some way or canceled or even deleted forever for a tax write-off. TikTok and its mysteriously powerful algorithm provide a constant stream of things we do want to watch. There are, of course, exceptions, from creators who seemed able to game the system, to users who would continually engage with content they claimed not to like, and then complain that they were getting shown that same kind of content. TikTok is by no means a perfect app. While much good has come from it, it has also been used to spread misinformation and create pile-ons, and also has its own share of censorship issues. So all of these different facets have come together to create a rather complex conversation around the possible ban of the app.
Everything begins with choice.
No, wrong. Choice is an illusion created between those with power and those without.
And as always, there's more to the story than shallow reports might suggest. All the framing often used around these kinds of bans, that it's all about keeping people safe, is often dubious at best, which we'll talk about in a moment. There are some real safety concerns that we all have to deal with every day. While we love our phones for keeping us connected to our favorite apps, listening to music, and watching videos, sometimes it feels like they're nearly impossible to use for their actual original purpose. Phone calls. Because we just get so many spam calls every day, we've just started ignoring all of them. And don't even get us started on those spam texts. Not only is this super annoying, it also means that we have to worry about missing a genuine call or message. I almost missed an important call from my bank once because I thought it was spam at first. Being inundated with all of that spam is miserable. But thankfully, that's where this video's sponsor Aura is here to help. Aura will help remove your personal information from data brokers and people search websites that can sell your data to those spam callers, identity thieves, and more. The less data you have exposed online, the less likely it is that you'll have to keep dealing with those spam calls. Aura also offers identity theft protection by monitoring your personal data across billions of data points. So if any of those spammers do end up getting your info, Aura has you covered. Up to 5 adults on the account get $1 million in identity theft insurance to help cover eligible losses and fees, with a total of up to $5 million. We love getting all of this and more in one app at one affordable price. I'm not leaving myself and my family vulnerable to data breaches and brokers, and if you don't want to either, you can go to aura.com/thetake to try 2 weeks for free. That will be enough time for Aura to find out if any of your personal data is exposed. Some people say, and likely already have been yelling about in the comments, that comparing the TikTok ban to things like film or book bans is ridiculous because books and films matter and TikTok is just a silly social media app with no value. But A, that's not true, and B, ignores the larger issue. Not the specifics of, but the intentions behind bans.
Choice. The problem is choice.
The media we create is a big part of how we connect with one another and share our most important thoughts and ideas. And this is true for short-form content just like it is with books, films, and music. Sure, there are a lot of TikToks that maybe don't hold much cultural value, but that's also true of every kind of media. One boring, banal TV show with nothing to say existing doesn't mean that TV as a concept is useless. And in that same vein, the more mindless side of TikTok doesn't automatically negate the more thoughtful and engaged communities that have sprung up there. Because of the power that media of all kinds can wield, unsurprisingly, people in power have long had an interest in taking control over the avenues of creation and dissemination of this media.
And so the definition of intellectual freedom has a second integral part, and that is total and complete freedom of access to all information and ideas regardless of the medium of communication used.
It's much easier to shape and control what a population thinks if you're more easily able to shape and control the ideas they even have access to in the first place.
The ability to express one's opinions, however, does not really mean very much if there is not someone to hear what he is saying.
Book bans have been around essentially as long as books themselves. While the ability to print and share information en masse was great for the public, it was a threat to the status quo. Way back in 1601, for example, Queen Elizabeth I demanded part of Shakespeare's Richard II be removed because it had allegedly influenced an uprising against her. In her piece on the history of book bans for National Geographic, Aaron Blakemore writes of the U.S., in 1873, the war against books went federal with the passage of the Comstock Act, a congressional law that made it illegal to possess obscene or immoral text or articles or send them through the mail. The law criminalized the activities of birth control advocates and forced popular pamphlets like Margaret Sanger's Family Limitation underground. And far from dying out, this issue has ramped up in recent years. Blakemore notes, the American Library Association reports that there were a record-breaking number of attempts to ban books in 2023, up 65% from the previous year, which was itself a record-breaking year. The visual arts have also long been trapped under the watchful eye of censors. In the US, the Hays Code was adopted in 1934 in an attempt to establish and maintain the highest possible moral and artistic standards in motion picture production, by banning everything from profanity to even the suggestion of sexuality and beyond. This code allowed the people in charge to control what kinds of films were made, and thus what kind of content audiences were allowed to watch. During the Cold War, interest turned more toward controlling political thought. The House Committee on Un-American Activities was created and went on a warpath to take complete control over Hollywood, concerned not only with the content of the films, but also the people making them, and led to the Hollywood Blacklist, a group of creatives who were banned from working in Hollywood because of alleged communist or subversive ties. Even today, MPAA ratings have a major impact on how widely films are able to be screened. Media in all of its forms can be a very powerful tool. It has the ability to educate people and bring them together, or to keep them confused and disconnected. While the first seems like an obvious good, the latter is what makes it much easier for people who are already in power to stay in power. And that's why far-ranging bans pop up again and again anytime any sort of media starts allowing people to share ideas outside of the control of those at the top.
Thought crime was so insidious. It just creeps up on you.
Regardless of the type of media in question, books, movies, apps, etc., there's usually an attempt to frame their usage as degeneracy. Why would you want to read that book anyways? What's wrong with you? Those movies aren't even good, they're full of lies. That's just a dumb app for kids, who cares if it goes away? This allows the people looking to do the banning to frame anyone who tries to go against the ban as automatically part of the problem, which makes it easier to hand-wave away their concerns. It's also often framed as a threat to security, for a group of people or even the entire country. For example, book bans are often framed as being there to protect children from getting too many ideas. The TikTok ban has been touted as an issue of national security. An adversarial country having all of the data on US citizens could be a big problem. But those pushing for the ban haven't actually provided much concrete evidence of that actually happening.
Excuse me, sir. Would you like to read about the First Amendment,
Sir, a little education.
Know your rights? Pamphlet on the First Amendment.
And more central to much of the pushback, the fact that these same people have never really seemed to care much at all about other major breaches or misuse of our data also deflates this idea that the concern is just over keeping us and our data safe. The real concern, it seems, stems from how the app has been used so effectively to educate people on a huge range of topics. Global conflicts, issues closer to home, our rights, and also allowed people to organize together around these topics. So given all of this, what should we actually take away from the TikTok ban? or even just the furor around it if it does end up getting saved at the last second. TikTok has been a useful tool for having fun and learning and organizing, but it's certainly not the end-all be-all, and as we discussed, does have its own share of issues. The loss of the algorithm sending us content that really does feel made for us will certainly be a bummer. But hopefully people will also realize that even if you aren't being directly fed that content, that doesn't mean that it's not out there. Instead of giving up or just hoping for the best on old apps, hopefully it will spur people to begin actively seeking out the kind of content that they want to see in the places that it does exist, and even continuing to create it themselves. Book, film, and music bans never really stopped the creation of important, engaging, and even radical work. They just altered the avenues through which they were created, shared, and protected by the communities that cared for them.
Banned Books Week was started in 1982 in response to the sudden surge in the number of challenges to books.
For TikTok, that likely won't look like everyone gathering in a basement somewhere to secretly watch old TikToks, though that could be pretty fun. But figuring out the essence of what drew people to the content they loved, and finding new avenues to share it. Finding communities post-ban without the assistance of the algorithm, or even having to work against algorithms, might not be easy, but it is possible. TikTok on its own isn't the totality of social media or modern connection, but it and the ban are both important parts of our time. So whether the ban goes through or not, hopefully this all spurs people to think more deeply about the media they interact with, what it really means to them, and what it means to lose it.
That's The Take. Click here to watch the video we think you'll love, or here to check out a whole playlist of awesome content. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications.